Sophia, we do have another caller in the queue here. You want to intro this one too?
So this is Gary, him from New York. And Gary says, mentally ill people are taken advantage of by religious food charities. I have schizoaffective disorder.
Yeah.
So we're bringing on.
There.
Hello, Gary.
Hi. Yeah, I was just calling because I'm 57 years old and I've had schizoaffective disorder since I was about 18. And I'm doing okay now financially. But there have been times in the past where I've had to go to religious charities for food. But they always put a stipulation, or almost always, that you sit through their particular version of a religious service in order to get the food that they're giving out. The food is free, but you have to sit through some sort of service. I had to endure like 3 hours of speaking in tongues, which I certainly did believe in, even when I was a Christian. I'm an atheist now, but there seems to be a stipulation that if you're poor, homeless, and mentally ill, if you're going to get food from a religious organization, they're going to push their beliefs on you, whether you agree with them or not. And to some extent, you actually start to pretend that you believe what they believe just to get the damn food.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you're talking about this, Gary, because I've done that. I've done like homeless volunteer efforts through churches in the past, and it does seem like it's like dangling a carrot situation where it's like, oh, here, we'll give you your needs for life if you just sit here and listen to this sermon for the next, half hour or whatever, right? And it does feel, it feels gross. It does feel gross. I think if you're going to help people, why don't you just help people? Why do you have to have this extra thing here in the middle of it, especially for folks who are in vulnerable situations when they're suffering from food insecurity? Like, that's the last kind of people I want to waste people's time with, right? So,
and may I ask you, Gary, did it make you more likely to be religious?
I think overall I've become less religious and an atheist because of the way religious people take advantage of those who are homeless and mentally ill. I mean, I want to make it perfectly clear. I'm in treatment and I take my medication. But if you're not taking your medication for whatever disorder you have, especially if it's a psychotic disorder, you're going to go along with anything just to get some food.
100%.
And people who are not medicated or not in treatment or don't have that available, or even if they just didn't like how they felt and so they went off of it, they deserve food and life necessities just as much as anybody else. And really sorry that happened to you.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
I mean, I think I became an atheist more because I was listening to people like Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, certainly other atheists. Aaron Ra, I'm a big fan of Aaron Ra. He's a very intelligent. He presents his arguments very good. I didn't reach the stage of being an atheist overnight. It was like over a 10-year process. I was raised Catholic, and I gave that up a long time ago. When I was 16, I did my confirmation. My father never brought it up again, and I never went back to a Catholic mass in my life.
Dang. He was just like, all right, done.
My father didn't drive into us like this hardcore religious belief. He just sort of went through the motions because he was raising 10 kids, and my mother had died, and he just wanted to do what she wanted. So,
Gary,
but
I sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just thinking, I used to be a part of a church, or I was for a little while, that I found out that they did a service where they actually told people to get off whatever medication they were using because they thought that the Holy Spirit was going to heal whatever ailments people were suffering from. And that really ticked me off. I mean, I was not a full-fledged atheist at that point. I was still deconstructing, but I remember being virulently mad about that situation. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I got the same situation when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't think I haven't drank in 10 years, but
congratulations.
It's sort of the same thing. I mean, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm doing fine now. I just
great.
wanted to point that out.
Oh, congratulations on being sober for 10 years and on, doing so well. But I think you make such a great point that it would be really different if I were to just sort of pontificate about that. But because this is your lived experience, you can say, like, this is what I saw and this is what I experienced. And no, it didn't actually make me more Christian. It sort of is demeaning. It sort of takes this.
It is demeaning.
Yeah, it makes you a checkmark in their religious.
Why should
list.
you be treated differently from the rest of those church congregants? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, if you're truly, in the eyes of God, just as sinful, just as, wretched, worthless, whatever Christians use to describe normal functioning people, like, why do you get to be the exception to this? Did you do something particularly wrong? I think that's the implication here, right? That you're suffering from food insecurity, or you're suffering from this mental illness, or you're suffering from blah, 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 because either you've messed up at some point in your life, or you're being challenged by demonic forces. I mean, it is demeaning in some way. It is something that I don't think anybody should be treating anybody with, right? So I'm sorry you had to go through that. Go ahead.
I live in upstate New York, and there's an organization called Food Link. They're non-religious, and they handle a lot of donated food. But once they distribute it to the mosques or churches or the synagogues or any other religious institution, it's up to those institutions how they give out the food.
Yeah.
So it's really left up to the individual organization.
Yeah.
Something
a lot of them.
Oh, sorry. It's something to remember if anybody's, donating to food banks or working in nonprofits, to think about the fact that you might be giving without stipulations, but it doesn't mean that everyone else is too. So if you're going to be, that's something to really remember.
Yeah, at least with nonprofits, there's usually some sort of record keeping for how some of these funds are done and stuff, right? Like, that's not obviously the case with churches, right? You really don't have to report exactly what happens with any donations and things. And this is pushback I get sometimes, and I'm sure you have too, where it's like, well, aren't these people doing good work for people at the end of the day? It's like, yes and no, right? I mean, maybe. I'm not going to doubt that somebody's been helped by a church for their situation. Yeah. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. But, like, are there ways in which we can make this process more transparent, right? Because I don't want to support a church that's going to preach to people. I'm sorry, even if they're helping people, like, I just don't think that's a good thing to do. I think there's other ways we can do that, right?
I think we also see when it becomes a community effort kind of across the United States, you see that a lot of times religious organizations will opt out of actually participating in collective work with other organizations because they want to be able to preach. So they're becoming less effective, even if they're still arguably doing good things.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like it's worth asking, is this the best way to do it, though?
Right.
Like, you might do a good thing, but if there's a way to be 10 times more effective, then why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I agree.
I would have to say, this is a different topic. I am lucky enough to be in a treatment center that's secular. They're not pushing religion on me. That never comes up. It's a publicly funded hospital that I go to for my outpatient treatment, and I'm lucky in that regard. I've heard of I believe it's a secular therapy project.
Yes.
That's a good project, and I'm already involved in something that's secular, and that's a lot more helpful than something that's religious. But that's all I really had to say.
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Gary, thanks so much for sharing that experience, because that's super important that you share that, and I'm honestly super happy about that. I especially like I like the fact that you did tie in, like, I struggle with this mental illness and I struggle with food insecurity, and I didn't get help from either, because it's like, how common is that? But, like, we don't say it in so plain words that Gary did, right? And I don't know. I'm like, are there secular options which we can help people with? Yes. And I hope that there's more that we can do. You don't have to, if you feel like there's a vulnerable population that you want to help, you don't have to feel like, oh, all the options are just like Christian ones. Like, there's definitely places out there. So.
And that's something maybe to remember as atheists too, is that there isn't always a lot of organization, behind atheism. It's pretty independent, but there are secular organizations out there. And, if we want to do good, we have to get involved and can't always just be like, well, Christians aren't doing things the right way. But it's like, I'm going to criticize them.
You know what? I hate to say it. Activism doesn't end at call-in shows.
Never.
I think we had more than like this thing. You know what I mean? Like, wait, this might not be the last thing we need to do. But anyway.